Hi, welcome to Daiwa Sports. We've been making fishing rods here since 1977. We're based in Wishaw, just outside Glasgow. My name's Steve McAveney, and today we're going to show you how it's done. Every rod that we make here at Daiwa Sports uses carbon fibre. The material is pre-impregnated with heat-reactive resins. That's where the name pre-preg comes from. In this department here in the cutting room, we've cut the patterns, the rod length, the reinforcements and all the elements that make up a full rod section. And we're going to show you that in detail now. Here's one of the details I was describing earlier, the cutting of the carbon patterns. We have a variety of materials here in my hand for the reinforcements that go at either end of the rods. But the longer part has been cut here by Tam, measured manually and cut manually, 8 layers, 10 layers at a time. Every single rod that we make is completely different. They contain a whole variety of different patterns and a multitude of different materials. All the patterns for every rod are actually presented in these drawings by the engineering department, and all the cutting is done manually to the millimetre. Now we're at the next stage. We're taking all the patterns and component parts of material that we've cut and we're tacking them together in advance of being adhered to the mandrels which form the shape of the rod section. So what we're doing now is actually tacking the assembled patterns to the mandrel using the small hot iron to activate a seam of resin, allowing us to align the carbon pattern onto the centre of the mandrel. And it's from here, the material is rolled around the mandrel, and what starts to occur is the shape of a rod section that is more familiar to us. All those patterns that have been cut have been tacked to the mandrel and have now been rolled. All the carbon patterns have now been rolled onto the mandrel, but before we cure it, we actually have to secure it into place using heat-resistant tape. And that is applied at precision with this machine here. It creates a continuous helix of overlapping tape, securing the cloth onto the mandrel during the curing process. And here's a spool of the tape that we actually use to wind round the cloth before the sections are put into the oven for curing. Now taped into place, the mandrels and carbon are hung up on these racks, put in the ovens at 140 degrees, which is computer controlled prior to the next stage. That is curing. Now that the sections have been cured into a full section, we have to remove the mandrel from the blank, and that's what this pneumatic pulling arm is doing. It's gripping the mandrel, and the steel chuck is pushing the cured section off of the metal component. Now that we've got a cured rod section, we have to prepare it for decorating, painting, thread wrapping and varnishing, and that's what's happened here. We grind, sand and cut to length all the sections that lead to our finished rods. Now that the sections have been smooth sanded and prepared for painting, they come to the paint shop where we apply a coat or several coats of clear or pigment paints. This is done in a controlled environment, and as you can see, this has to be done smoothly and evenly to get the best finish. Now that the rods have been painted and decorated with the screen printing, we actually have to go through handle assembly. All the component parts are designed to our specification, and all the design process of the components and the handle parts are actually done through drawings prepared by the engineering department. One of the next processes is putting guides on the rods. What we're doing here is actually marking up the sections and the positions for each of those guides. All the components are issued along with a key point document to the thread wrapping team, which you'll see next. So now that the rods have been decorated, painted and been through handle assembly, One of the final processes is thread wrapping, and this is what we're doing here, applying the guides to the rods with thread, all done manually, all the alignment and judgment done by eye. Now that you've seen the guides thread wrapped onto the rods, we actually have to varnish them into place. And what we're doing here is actually using a machine called an ultraviolet dryer, a UV dryer. The thread is varnished initially with an undercoat, passes to a hot air chamber and then to a UV chamber where it's part cured. And then we apply a final second coat which gives it a high build finish every time. All the way through the production process, tips and butts are made separate from each other, and this is where the batches actually meet for the first time. There's still a lot of finishing required before the products are finally bagged and put to stock. Tips are matched with butts. We also take into consideration the clearance on spigoted rods, and we check for little marks, blemishes and small parts that need maybe cleaned up. Everything's 100% checked by QA before packing and putting to stock. And here we have a batch of carp rods that are ready to go to stock. One finishing touch that we do apply to all our carp rods is that they're inspected in threes, bagged in threes, so that they're the exact same on the bank, straight from the bag.